Republican Congressman Chris Collins of New York says he will not step down after being arrested and indicted on federal insider trading charges. At a press conference in Buffalo Wednesday, the 68-year-old congressman was adamant in his defense, claiming he did nothing wrong.
The charges that have been levied against me are meritless, and I will mount a vigorous defense in court to clear my name. I look forward to being fully vindicated and exonerated, ending any and all questions relating to my affiliation with Innate. As I fight to clear my name, rest assured, I will continue to work hard for the people and constituents of the 27th Congressional District of New York, and I will remain on the ballot running for re-election this November.
CBS News correspondent Tony DeCopel takes a closer look at the investigation into Collins.
In this video from last year's White House congressional picnic, you can see Representative Chris Collins there in a white polo shirt talking on his cell phone instead of enjoying the festivities. The footage uncovered by CBS News appears to show the moment the FBI says the three-term congressman passed along information about a multi-billion-dollar biotech company that ultimately led to $750,000 in insider trading.
Congressman Collins had an obligation, a legal duty, to keep that information secret until that information was released by the company to the public. But he didn't keep it secret.
At the time of the alleged crime, Collins was on the board of an Australian company called Innate Immunotherapeutics. While at the White House picnic in June 2017, Collins got an email from the company's CEO conveying extremely bad news, a clinical failure for one of its most important drugs. 1 minute after receiving the email, he dialed his son, Cameron Collins. Authorities say after 6 missed calls, they finally connected, and Collins allegedly tipped his son off about the disastrous drug trial. Almost immediately, the FBI says Cameron started trying to sell his stake in the company, passing the tip to his fiancée, her father, and at least 6 co-conspirators. On June 27th, when news of the drug failure finally broke publicly, shares in Innate Immunotherapeutics dropped 92%.
I have the honor of seconding the nomination of Donald J. Trump.
Collins was the first member of Congress to endorse President Trump. Today, he pleaded not guilty in federal court. In a statement, his attorney pointed out Collins himself is not accused of trading any stock. We are confident he will be completely vindicated and exonerated. Now, it is legal for a sitting member of Congress to be on a corporate board as long as they're not being paid. But late today, House Speaker Paul Ryan said he'd be removing Collins from a committee position, calling insider trading a clear violation of public trust. Collins could face years behind bars if convicted here, but perhaps more urgently in his mind, he'll face voters in November. Brooke?
Tony, thank you. Earlier, I spoke with attorney and host of the Law and Crime Network, Jesse Weber, right after Congressman Collins held that press conference addressing the charges. He pointed out that he held on to all his shares when he had this information that a key drug trial had gone badly for this company that he was the largest shareholder in, and said he lost millions because he held on to those shares. But is that a defense for the charges that were made against him?
No. And look, he is making a strong case for why he believed in the company and for why he believed in the drug. The problem is that he's charged with a multitude of crimes, and it really doesn't matter whether he lost money on it or not. And let's not forget, he wasn't legally able to sell those shares because of a number of factors, including being investigated by the ethics commissions and that he was a board of director, and this was all in Australia. The most important thing is he has been charged with conspiracy, lying to the FBI, wire fraud. All of this really doesn't matter because what he ultimately is accused of doing is taking material, non-public information, sharing it with another individual, and that person traded on that information. That is the key fact of this case.
Walk us through some of these facts. What do we know? What was laid out in the indictment?
So what was laid out in the indictment was he gets an email from the CEO of this company saying that the drug is a total failure. We know in a written email back, he was surprised by the results. 15 seconds to a minute after getting this email, he makes a phone call to his son. Now, we don't know what the phone call is, but you put 2 and 2 together, you know what it looks like.
Well, what does the son then do?
Right. Son then, minutes after this, starts taking proactive steps to sell the stock. His wife, let me rephrase, his fiancée immediately logs onto her brokerage account. In the next morning, after having this conversation, he immediately dumps the stock. In the days after, he keeps unloading and unloading stock, and we know he couples that with conversations with his father. We know that from the phone logs. So in a circumstantial evidence case, it's very strong. His best defense is we don't know what those phone calls were.
You're Chris Collins' defense attorney. What's your advice to him?
Exactly this. I say, you know what? The elections are coming up in November. We know that October 11th is a status hearing. I'll do everything in my path to try to prolong any trial, to try to prolong any discovery. Let's push this past November, have a clean public image as much as possible. This press conference helped in that way. It wasn't for the prosecutors. It was for potential voters. At the same time, what does the prosecution have? Do they have text messages indicating that he told his son any of this information? It could be the strongest circumstantial evidence case, but I have seen cases fall apart where it is just circumstantial. At the same point, when you have this very strong timeline and this very suspicious behavior, I've also seen it go the other way. It's a really tricky scenario, and in this phase, you might see a plea deal, but based upon what we just heard, looks unlikely.
Well, you say you've seen cases like this fall apart. How do they fall apart?
Because a jury is going to say, am I really going to sentence this guy? Am I really going to find him guilty if I don't have the ultimate information? Maybe the defense can raise enough reasonable doubt. Because remember, under the law, it's not just having the material, non-public information, but it's acting on that information and trading on it. Can they present enough defense? Hey, let's look at the trading patterns of his son. Did he trade like this before, unloading stock after having conversations with his father? Maybe he had a different conversation about it. It may be a stretch from what we see in the indictment, but the defense has some work to do.
Are these co-defendants that you bother trying flipping, or because of the family connections, you just go after them all?
What a family dynamic this is. So if you look at the indictment, there is a numerous amount of unindicted, not named co-conspirators, but you can look at it and you understand the relationship. They are Chris Collins' son's fiance, the fiance's mother, the brother of the fiance's father, this whole family connection. Now, they haven't been charged, they haven't been implicated, but they have been implicated and they've had to pay up fines based upon from the SEC. But if you look at a trial, are they really going to testify against the Collins? They're not married yet. So that spousal privilege doesn't attach. She's not married to him yet, which makes a really interesting dynamic.
What happens if they get married before the trial?
Can she testify against her husband? Probably not. And that becomes an interesting dynamic. But again, are they having conversations right now about you have to save yourself? Do you have to save me? I mean, the father, her father, has been named in this indictment, but the wife and his daughter have not been. It's a really weird scenario. I don't think I've seen something like this in quite some time.
They may have to reprint the save the date invitations. Maybe we want to get married a little sooner.
Yeah.
He tried to portray this story of a guy caring about a terrible, debilitating disease in MS. As we point out, he didn't sell his shares, which doesn't go to the heart of the charges against him. But do you think that story that we just heard, where he tries to reframe this as a guy who's trying to help people with a terrible disease, is that something you can spin in front of a jury? I
think it's a great avenue to spin, especially if he gets convicted in a sentencing, when that jury ultimately has to decide, or when a judge has to decide. They'll take this soundbite and they'll use it later on. And I think there's not much he can do right here. He said, I don't want to litigate it in the court of public opinion, which I think is very smart. Yeah. We're going to litigate it in the courtroom. The problem is there's not much more he can say. Do I believe, or if a jury or the public or voters, I believe that he believed in this company and he wanted it to work and he believed in this drug? Absolutely. But it's not going to really help him from a legal perspective.
Okay. Jesse Weber, thank you so much for your insights as we hear and try to speculate at what the future holds. Thanks so much.
Thank you.